Shoshana Stefanchik, president and founder of Step Up. And today we're going to be talking about the power of vertical progressions. I know I have Val and Jessica on the call from my company, and a few more might be popping in. Please feel free at any time throughout this. I'll try to pause and ask if you have questions, or if there's anything particular that you would love to learn or questions. If you want to pop that into the chat, then Val can look at that and make sure, Val, you could ask it for me. But today on this call, I wanted to really cover three major goals. One is just review the purpose of vertical progressions and the why we're talking about them. And then I specifically want to talk about how they can be used to support personalized learning and to support special educators. They can be used in a lot more ways, MTSS, and lots of different ways for teachers. My hope is after you look at them today, lots of ideas will be spinning in your mind of how you could use those. But I'll just do a high level overview. So the first is, what are vertical progressions? And this is me making up my version and what our company has created, but a vertical progression is really going to be a progression of standards across a span of grades. So typically in a proficiency scale, which we'll look at some at the end and kind of talk how they fit into this work, a proficiency scale is going to tease out a standard within a certain grade level, where vertical progressions are going to be looking at a span. Ours, we go ahead and do K through 12 of how the standards actually progress from grade to grade. So it's going to be huge in personalized learning because you have to identify where a student is in their learning. So vertical progressions are actually the ones that we've created, and I think I just haven't seen them much, so it's hard for me to say how others might have done it, but we looked at measurement topics. So post-pandemic, the state of Missouri selected priority standards for each grade level. And so if you look within the priorities that they have chosen, there are these big, this measurement topics term comes from actually Marzano, but he says, what are the major topics that students have to master K through 12? And so I have on the screen here a table of contents of the big ones we have seen, which are drawing conclusions, summarizing, and vocabulary, it'd be suffixes, affixes. So you're not going to have sometimes vertical progressions for every domain and every standard. You're going to create them for those big topics that are in, it's almost like priority standard of topics K through 12. So once you have that and you understand the measurement topic, then you can create a vertical progression by finding all of the standards K through 12 that align with that topic and putting them there. So here's an example of one that we've created, and it has drawing conclusions and supporting with textual evidence. We all know that that is a major topic. Now, one of the things we've done in our scale that I would recommend, whether you're creating them or looking at purchasing, but especially, well, I'm going to say not just in ELA, even in all contents, we start ours off with vocabulary, because many times this is a place that causes confusion for teachers. This specific one, inferencing and conclusion, I worked with so many teachers, and I myself taught them as the same thing when they're really two different things. And so having the vocabulary there is huge for teachers, and for that vertical articulation that we're teaching it the same way with the same definition. Questions or thoughts about that? Because I feel like I've talked too long, so I'm going to ask a question. But I think vocabulary is a huge thing to try to have on there. And then we're going to look K through 12. What are all the standards connected to that topic? And we've listed those. Since Missouri has priority standards, we've also highlighted or bolded the priority standards. So as teachers are going through and seeing all the skills, they know the overarching one that was prioritized for Missouri. But this is an example of what one could look like K through 12. Sometimes I'm going to say in math, we see this a lot more often. Typically in ELA, most of these standards vertically run K through 12, but sometimes you'll have concepts that start in 6th grade and end in 12th grade, depending on the topic. Or some of your reading foundational standards, you'll see the vertical progression might start at 5th grade because we really stopped teaching reading foundational So I'm just saying, if you ever see a vertical progression that stops at a grade level or starts at a specific one, it's because that content is introduced or stops being covered. Questions or thoughts about vertical progressions? Anything you're wondering or anything I might have missed? Hi, Jennifer. I saw you hopped on. Okay, so this is just an overview of what a vertical progression could look like. So then the question might be, as we hear a lot about Missouri being a personalized learning and competency based, we're looking at that model. How can those be helpful in personalized learning? So let's see, I think here we go. So if you have a fifth grader who cannot write complete sentences, we've got a little arrow here. We've pulled up an English vertical progression for writing, and we found the one with writing complete sentences. You can see there's quite a few things under fifth grade, but here it is, produce a variety of complete sentences. So now you can use this as a ladder or a continuum. You can start within fifth grade and kind of work your way up. Well, can they do these things? And if they can't do these things, then we're going to move to fourth grade. Well, can they produce and expand a complete sentence? And then these other supporting standards are really prerequisites of things they need to understand. But you can see Missouri prioritized writing a sentence all the way through. So we might move up to, well, do they understand and can they write a simple sentence using exclamation, declarative, interrogative? You can keep working your way up till you can find where that student falls off in order to personalize and identify what level they're on. So I think a lot of times when we hear about personalized learning, we hear a lot about proficiency scales, and we haven't heard as much about vertical progressions, but to me, they're a pivotal piece into understanding you have to be able to identify where that student is on the continuum, and a vertical progression is the easiest way to do that. So we're going to see the same thing for our special educators when they're trying to find present level. Really personalized learning, you're doing the same type of thing. You're looking at where is their present level or their where they can currently fall on that continuum, and you can work your way up. Now, again, these supporting standards are a subset of prerequisite skills that you can do as many lessons in order for them to reach that. So for special educators, one of the things I want to encourage leaders who are on here or might be watching the call later, that we've really heard a lot that they have been not always given information about the standards, and they have so much paperwork and so many other things that we have found a barrier for them writing goals has been they're pulling it off of data, and sometimes it's not always connected to a standard. It's just a goal that they've kind of contrived sometimes. And so I actually had gotten this process from an RPDC in the Southeast that they were using and really trying to help support educators. And it's got a little quote down here. They got it from the NASD Project Forum. But these 7 steps to encourage educators, they really should be making standards-based IEPs. So here's a 7-step process that they have recommended. And what I've done here on step 2, 6, and 7 is just put in parentheses and bold, here's the part where you could be using vertical progressions and your proficiency scales. So of course, they're going to start with current present level or data. But again, for number 2, they're going to need to find out where present level is. So it's the same thing that we looked on personalized learning using these, and this is a different one for decoding, but finding where is my student, where should they be, but where are they really at on the continuum. You can look at data and then find this. Sometimes it's going to show you that you need to do further testing to find out really where they are. But it's going to also, to me, it expedites the learning for special educators who may not have time to sift through a million standards documents and be experts for all the kids they serve. It helps them really be able to see, gosh, what are the standards? And if I need to write a goal, I probably need to be looking at the ones that are really prioritized And again, these supporting standards are giving special educators ideas of things they need to go back and either assess to understand if kids have mastered them or not, or many lessons and things they need to cover in order to help students master it. Another thing have included in some of our proficiency scales and our vertical progression books. This is even a larger lens of vertical progressions, but just looking at how topics build in general. And this one's really important to me because I was in a SPED training and I had an educator say to me, I'm so upset because I know that my student has a lot of trouble with phonics, but their testing data shows that they can't comprehend. So I have to write their goal on that. I can't focus on phonics. Again, I was like, ah! But the thing is, I think that probably happens. If this educator's thinking that, I'm like, okay, there's probably a lot of people who think that way. And as a first grade teacher, I didn't understand until year 7 or 8, kind of this continuum of how things built. And so even having this high level chart we've created, and you can see on the left here that I've tried to connect it to the standards, but how your domains build, comprehension is at the very top of that. You have to be able to read independently. Before you can do that, you have to read fluently. And if you can't read fluently, then you need to go back to phonics. So what the conversation with that educator was, hey, you just have to be able to defend why you need to go back and do phonics. And that teacher needed to understand if they can't comprehend, then one of these things underneath here isn't mastered. So we created this just to help people understand where they are on that continuum. Is it a comprehension issue? Well, can they read independently? No. Well, is it a fluency issue? And then once they can find this domain, then you can help determine what vertical progression to work on too. But even that high level, I think sometimes with the science of reading too, we've gotten so phonics heavy, we've maybe not forgotten that you also have to remember what you read. Like it's the whole big package. But helping people really understand how reading progresses. Progressions are just a huge thing to understand that we don't always get coming out of college, to have those really great conversations to help support students. And that was just on a scenario. Let's see. So vertical progressions are a way to see how standards come across the continuum. They can help in personalized learning and in SPED, really understanding that present level and giving you ideas and identifying where a child is on the continuum. What's next, in my point, and we've heard a lot of people just jumping straight to proficiency scales. So I was just going to put a slide in here, Marzano's work, and here's some great high reliability schools have those. He talks about that's a great book if you're developing your own. But I wanted to put this in to just say, I think vertical progressions really come first. And let me go back here. Anytime you have these bigger priorities, what we've done in our work is that then leads to what should your proficiency scale be over. Once you identify where they're at on this continuum, now you want to go deeper and you want to find a proficiency scale on that specific priority. So vertical progressions are a subset or they're an overarching goal to get to proficiency scales. And in conclusion, I just wanted to remind everybody, I used ELA as an example today, but they're very powerful in ELA, in math, and all the contents. Science, what you're going to find if you really dive in, and what we found in our book, is there are a ton of gaps within the science standard themselves. And so when you look at science instruction and why things aren't always happening, it's important to look at those vertical progressions so you can see where things aren't being taught and the huge gaps, because sometimes we have to go above and beyond the standards. And then in social studies, we've taken a different approach because the tools of inquiry, we wanted to help people see how those build K through 12, but we went ahead and made content vertical progressions as well, because I think it's really powerful for educators to see, because sometimes it gets left out. But if you can see that continuum of what it is a big deal in government and things later, it can help educators kind of see even the gaps within their own standards. The last thing I'll say, if you are on this call and you already have our vertical progressions, one of the most powerful activities that we've been doing, especially in some of our writing training, and I know we've done it in math as well, is if you have teachers, you give them a vertical progression. I'm going to give you an example for writing, and you have each grade level K through 12 look at just their category in each of the vertical progressions and write down what does proficiency look like in a narrative writing for a kindergartner? What does proficiency look like for a narrative as a first grade writer? And let them summarize it and then do a gallery walk K through 12 and talk about how you see the rigor. That is an amazing opportunity. Again, that example you can do with any of these, but the conversations we've had K through 12 and the realizations of, I had no idea that the rigor got that deep in fourth grade. I had no idea, man, we've got a huge gap. There's always a huge gap, everyone, between second and third grade. A lot of times kindergarten teachers will find, that's why we should be pushing our kids, because they've already got to do 3 paragraphs by third grade. So beyond some of the things I showed with vertical progressions, it's huge if you want to get into those vertical conversations. It gives you data and just a tool to really help people articulate across the grades, because again, writing is a huge one, and math. A math one that I see all the time is money is huge in second grade. They're interchanging it, do all these things. Well, it's not even a priority in K1 anymore. Of course, if you've taught forever, you know to always hit your money, but it's important for people to see that might not have been something on my radar, but after that vertical conversation, hey, I am going to make sure to add that into my plans because it's a big deal, and I'm gonna throw people off down the train if I don't make sure that I'm hitting it. So that is really my talk on vertical progressions. I'm going to pause here, and Val, if you don't mind looking at the chat for me, but feel free to unmute or use the chat. Any questions or anything else you would like me to answer before we kind of get off here? Okay. Well, if not, feel free. You guys can always reach out. But I thank you for your time today and hope you got a few nuggets and have your mind spinning about what vertical progressions can do. Oh, one other thing I forgot. Oh gosh, now you guys have to see all my tabs. But if you are looking at this and thinking, how can we get those? You could go to our website here. If you go to our SPED Insight tool, actually, I thought, never mind. Go to under map books. You go to the bottom there, you can see our vertical progressions and take a look. If you want to look more closely at some samples, whether you're creating your own or you're interested in those, that would be a place you could look for those.
And I'll put that link in the chat so you can get right to them.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.